The sight of a wrestler being suddenly dropped on their head, a performer falling from a great height, or individuals having their bodies obliterated by inanimate objects will forever force fans to go absolutely nuts, and simultaneously question whether what they just saw was supposed to even happen. In many cases, it definitely was, as some of the most iconic bumps in wrestling history were planned out in advance. But accidents can still happen when trying to create these shocking moments. That being said, there are also those other types of bumps which sounded like a truly terrible idea from the moment they were pitched. I'm Gareth from WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 sickening wrestling bumps that should have never happened. Number 10, Enzo Amore gets knocked out by a ring rope. Even though Enzo Amore was largely an annoying little idiot throughout most of his WWE tenure, you still wouldn't wish a disturbing concussion on any professional wrestler, and the one the former Cruiserweight champion suffered at Payback 2016 was about as dreadful as they come. During a botched spot which saw Simon Gotch of the Vaudevillains attempting to hurl Amore out of the ring in the middle of a tag team bout, the latter collided with the ring ropes. This caused Amore's head to snap back onto the mat, and the star was then left in a knocked-out heap on the outside. WWE tried to cover their tracks somewhat by announcing that the Vaudevillains had won the encounter, despite the bout being ruled as a no contest. But it was very much apparent that this painful cock-up was anything but part of the plan. Number 9, Kairi Sane's neck gets buckle-bombed. Coming towards the end of her run as a WWE wrestler, former NXT Women's Champion Kairi Sane was given the unenviable job of taking on the irresistible force Nia Jax during an episode of Monday Night Raw earlier this year. After being ragdolled around the ring for much of the match by the former Raw Women's Champion, Sane was eventually pulverized with a monstrous buckle bomb. Instead of being safely dumped back first onto the top turnbuckle, however, the Kabuki Warrior was insanely launched neck first at the bottom one. This sloppy attempt at the potentially dangerous move immediately led to the company receiving backlash from fans online. And it wasn't long before WWE reportedly banned the buckle bomb from being used for a spell. If this unplanned impact wasn't bad enough though, Sane was also badly busted open during another bout with Jax around the same time. At least there's no risk of her being injured by her old tormentor again, now that she's safely back home in Japan. Number 8, Randy Orton gets his head caved in by Brock Lesnar. Coming off of an eye-catching return to the UFC Octagon in July 2016, you sensed WWE were going to go all in on making Brock Lesnar's next in-ring encounter feel as legit as possible. Sure enough, during the Beast Incarnate and Randy Orton's SummerSlam clash, the pair both put in a rather stiff shift. However, all of the brutality on show throughout the majority of the bout paled in comparison to the chilling conclusion of this main event spectacle. Though it may not technically be classed as a bump, the sight of Lesnar authentically busting open his opponent with a set of sharp elbow strikes gave even the most sickening of full-body collisions a run for their money. But was it really worth pissing off the guys in the back and leaving one of your most reliable veterans in a pool of his own blood / suffering from a very real concussion just to make Lesnar look like a badass and set up a Shane McMahon match absolutely nobody wanted to see? No, it was not. Number 7, Suicide and Christopher Daniels' frightening fall. Disaster is never too far away once you step into the high-wire world of Ultimate X. This is something current AEW stars and teammates Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian, then under the Suicide persona, found out the hard way at Bound for Glory in 2009. With Daniels and Suicide jockeying for position whilst balanced on the dangerously high up set of ropes, you sensed it was only a matter of time before a jaw-dropping maneuver put one of the stars, or both, out of commission. And that's exactly what happened. Both stars seemed to lose control and landed rather awkwardly on the mat below. Daniels looked to have taken the worst of the poorly executed bump, and had he not found a way to turn his body at the very last second, he could have very much landed skull first on the ground. This move had disaster written all over it, and probably wasn't worth risking life and limb to pull off in the first place. Number 6, Zack Ryder is dumped off the stage in a wheelchair. Knees first. God bless Zack Ryder. After remarkably managing to turn himself into a hot commodity through his highly successful YouTube series, The True Long Island Story, Ryder was finally given more time in the spotlight in 2011 and 2012, and even found himself involved with the likes of John Cena on weekly programming. However, all of his organic momentum came screeching to a dramatic halt the minute he found himself rolling around backstage in a wheelchair on Monday Night Raw. Ryder had been brutally kayfabe injured by Kane beforehand, but WWE clearly felt that having the big red machine chokeslam him through the stage in front of his love interest Eve wasn't embarrassing enough. So after Ryder witnessed Eve and Cena necking off, all while trapped in his aforementioned mode of transport, the former US champion confronted WWE's top babyface. This then opened the door for another dastardly attack from the recently returning Kane, who decided to send Ryder knee first off the side of the stage. Firstly, this awful bump clearly hadn't had all of the kinks ironed out, as the unprotected impact on Ryder's knees is still a bit hard to watch today. And the lad had just seen his buddy kiss the girl he fancied. Hadn't he been through enough? This was just cruel and unnecessary. Number 5, Shane McMahon gets thrown through plexiglass. As Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon battled their way through a hellacious street fight at King of the Ring 2001, the pair were under the impression that the glass the Olympic gold medalist would be launching the son of the WWE chairman through would be of the sugar variety. Yet they quickly found out that WWE had installed plexiglass instead. After trying and excruciatingly failing on a number of occasions, Angle was eventually able to send the young McMahon through 2 of the glass panels, picking up a frightening amount of legit lacerations for their troubles. Needless to say, none of this plexi carnage should have been on the cards in the first place, and it's still a rough watch nearly 2 decades later. Number 4, Brock Lesnar's shooting star mess. In case you didn't know, Brock Lesnar does whatever the hell Brock Lesnar wants to do. However, that doesn't just apply to the Beast Incarnate's approach to WWE appearances in recent times. This way of thinking also means that if this freak athlete feels like attempting something a man of his size probably shouldn't even be thinking about, you bet your ass he's gonna do it. This was never more clear than when the next big thing opted to execute a shooting star press during his WWE Championship main event bout with Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 19, after the Olympian had brought the idea up to him a week prior. Even though Lesnar had pulled off the impressive aerial maneuver regularly during his time in OVW, the eventual UFC heavyweight champion ultimately hesitated and ended up landing right on his neck on the night. Paul Heyman has since classed this moment as another example of how his clients could be given bad advice from those in the back on occasion, and this particular piece, as he put it, almost cost Brock his entire career. Number 3, Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara's all-out table spot. After already producing one unnecessarily brutal image in the form of Matt Hardy having his head split open by a projectile chair, Sammy Guevara and the Broken Veterans AEW feud took another uncomfortable turn. During the pair's Broken Rules match at this year's All Out pay-per-view, a spot consisting of Hardy being tackled off a scissor lift through some tables below was ill-advisedly green-lit. Unfortunately, Hardy found this out the hard way when his head smacked off the concrete floor upon impact. AEW rightly came under fire for their decision to allow Hardy to continue, after clearly being knocked unconscious mid-match from this bump. Hopefully, the company have learned some valuable lessons from this disturbing situation, and ensure their performers aren't put in these situations again going forward. Number 2, Joey Mercury's face gets destroyed by a ladder. Having a wrestler launch themselves onto a ladder which then fires straight up into the faces of multiple individuals, what could go wrong? This very spot went down during a WWE Tag Team Championship bout at Armageddon 2006. Luckily, Johnny Nitro was looking up when the ladder Jeff Hardy landed on pinged up at himself and his partner, and was therefore only struck in the throat. However, Joey Mercury wasn't so fortunate, as his head took most of the blow due to staring straight at the incoming object. As Matt Hardy graphically recalls, his face was bleeding like someone went to a sink and turned the faucet on. It was was gruesome. It's clear this bump wasn't thought through nearly enough in the lead up to the match, and should have probably been vetoed long before Mercury's face was obliterated. Number 1. Mankind falls through Hell in a Cell. Though Mankind had already taken a serious tumble off the structure earlier in his Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker at King of the Ring 1998, that moment had been discussed pre-match and approved. His horrifying second descent, however, most definitely had not. The roof of the cell had been designed to sag as the match continued, with the eventual endgame being for Taker to push Mankind through it and for him to dangle upside down before then rotating onto his front when landing in the ring. Yet this original plan ended up working a little too well, as the chain link mesh wound up sagging too much and simply couldn't contain Foley as he was chokeslammed straight to hell. Foley, being the inhumanly tough individual he is, somehow managed to finish the match, going on to be chokeslammed onto thumbtacks and tombstoned in the conclusion. However, this now iconic unplanned bump could have cost Foley his life in all honesty, and is a moment you'll never likely see repeated ever again in a WWE ring, which is probably for the best. Know of any other sickening wrestling bumps that should have never happened? Let us know all about them in the comment section below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button. Also, be sure to head on over to WhatCulture.com and click on some more incredible articles just like the one this video is based on. I've been Gareth from WhatCulture Wrestling. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon.